We are prioritizing access to gasoline in southwestern British Columbia, Vancouver Island, and the Sunshine Coast for a short period of time, the next 10 to 11 days.
The effects of Monday's storm still being felt in parts of southern British Columbia. Just a few hours ago, Public Safety Minister Mike Farnworth bringing in new fuel rules, prioritizing gas for essential vehicles and limiting the amount you can fill up to 30 liters. Non-essential travel is also prohibited on badly affected highways, including the 99, where RCMP say they are now dealing with 4 missing people after a mudslide south of Lillooet.
The conditions on the ground have changed. The water has equalized on both sides, so we don't have water pouring into the bowl. And so when we learned this new information, we had some options that we didn't have before.
In the Fraser Valley, Abbotsford Mayor Henry Braun pulled an about-face today, saying a levy announced yesterday that would have forced residents out of 22 homes will not be built. The situation on the Sumas Prairie is ever-changing. Nearby communities like Yarrow continue to sandbag against the running tide of Monday's record rainfall. And now worries about the forecast in the coming days, with yet more rain on the horizon. Good evening and thanks for joining us. Days after these floods destroyed our highway system and forced thousands from their homes, BC is now moving to extraordinary measures, a cap on the amount of gas you can buy as we deal with shortages. As of right now, it's 30 liters of gas per visit to a station. Dan Burritt joins us live with more on this. Dan, how long is this limit expected to last?
10 to 11 days, Anita. The emergency order covers all drivers from the Lower Mainland to Hope, the Sea to Sky region, Vancouver Island, and the Gulf Islands. Essential vehicles like ambulances, fire trucks, public transit, commercial trucks, and infrastructure repair vehicles are not limited. Gas stations will have to make sure their fuel lasts until December 1st. The storms have shut down the Trans Mountain pipeline, which supplies some of BC's fuel, but the province is bringing in more gas from Alberta, Washington, Oregon, even California. Mike Farnworth says police won't be enforcing fuel limits at gas stations. Instead, he's asking you to try to get around in other ways if you can.
We're asking people to use public transit in impacted regions whenever possible. Carpool, share with a friend, walk, use alternative methods. It's 10 to 11 days where we have to pull together as a province, particularly here in the Lower Mainland. If we do that, we will succeed. If we're greedy, we'll fail.
Already this order has some people rushing here to get what they can in Vancouver. Gas stations are not allowed to price gouge under this order, but some people at the pumps support the limit given the crisis.
30 liters per fill-up's okay. I think everyone is overreacting with groceries, toilet paper, now gas, so 30 liters is fine by me.
I think it's necessary, because there is obviously a shortage of fuel, so we all have to do our bit.
Farnworth warns anyone who gets abusive or threatening to gas station workers can be fined. Now, this fuel limit is just one of 2 major orders today. Let's take a look at the map. The province has banned non-essential travel on 3 highways that have been badly damaged by these storms. That includes Highway 99 near Lillooet, where we know there was a slide, Highway 3 from Hope to Princeton, and Highway 7 in Agassiz to Hope. Commercial trucks moving water and food, fuel, medical supplies, livestock, and feed, those will be allowed on the roads. The province does plan to enforce the rules with police patrols and road checks.
If you don't need to be traveling right now, don't. Stay home. And if you can't do that, carpool or take public transit or work from home. Because if you don't need to travel, then you won't need gas.
Meanwhile, the province has been able to reopen a part of Highway 3 that was in the map there just a moment ago into the interior. The Coquihalla will take much longer. As you can see, still closed in there, massive damage. This stretch of part of the Highway 3 is now open. But again, if you do not have to travel, stay off the roads. Anita.
Lots of changes, but necessary, Dan. Thank you. The city of Abbotsford is changing course as it tries to keep up with changing conditions. The plan to build a levee to stop water from flowing has been scrapped. Now crews are working on a new fix. John Hernandez is live in Abbotsford tonight. John, this is basically a race against time, isn't it?
Yeah, Anita, the clock is ticking. The city says it's touch and go right now, and anything can change at a moment's notice. But Abbotsford Mayor Henry Braun says he's confident crews can patch up that 100-meter break in the dike system in just a few days. Now, the broken dike is a big reason why water continues to flow into the flooded Sumas Prairie area. The original plan was to have the military build a levee along Highway 1 that would prevent further flooding, but it would have flooded an additional 22 properties in the area. That plan is off the table. Henry Braun says water flows have equalized. Now it's all hands on deck to fix that dike system before the next major rain event on Monday.
I'm concerned about the Nooksack again overflowing its banks. And if it does, that water is coming right back through Sumas, across our prairie, and into that bowl. And that's what we're trying to stop before the next rain event.
Now, Braun says 64 military personnel are on the ground in Abbotsford. They're inspecting the rest of the dike system, looking for weaknesses, and so far they say they've identified a few. Now, as we've been hearing all day, anything can change at a moment's notice.
So many farm animals as well, John, have already died out there in Abbotsford, and there's big concern from farmers trying to save the rest. What's the update on that today?
Yes, Agricultural Minister Lana Popham says it's been another very challenging day on the agricultural front. Today, she said about 20,000 hectares of farmland have been impacted by the flooding. That's about more than 900 farms, actually. And as you said, thousands of livestock have died in these floods. There are efforts to get feed to the surviving animals through airdrops of water and food. But now we're also hearing today that there have been some tensions between farmers trying to get back to their barns and police stopping them because of hazardous roads.
Roads that are incredibly dangerous still, and so there are RCMP blocks up protecting the safety of the public. We do have a permit system that is allowing farmers to get through those evacuation blocks, but we are seeing the dynamic situation with the roads. They can go from being potentially safe to very unsafe very quickly.
She says farmers should not put themselves in harm's way trying to cross a roadblock. Now, some good news. She also says 35 veterinarians are on standby and are eager to help surviving animals. Anita.
CBC's John Hernandez reporting live in Abbotsford tonight. Thanks, John. Now, John mentioned the military. It's also on the ground helping to run emergency operations. About 30 more air personnel flew in this afternoon from their base near Quebec City. They will use helicopters to transport goods and supplies to communities that are cut off from the rest of the province. It will also help to move those people who need urgent medical care. They join more than 100 soldiers from across the country already called in to help.
This is one of the most proudest things we can do, is when Canadian citizens are in need, we're here to help. And I think all of the soldiers that are here tonight are extremely proud to be able to come and lend a hand to the residents of BC as they need it.
These soldiers from Edmonton will mostly be assisting with sandbagging operations, but among them are medics and people who specialize in logistics. Many of the troops expected to be in the province for at least 30 days, but they say the length of their deployment could change depending on how the situation evolves. Well, the floods have wreaked havoc and cost the farming community hundreds of thousands of dollars. Those losses will also impact BC's most vulnerable people and organizations like the Food Bank working to support them. Janella Hamilton takes a closer look at one of the flood's damaging ripple effects.
There are some very, very desperate situations for a lot of folks throughout the province.
Daniel Huang Taylor says food banks across BC have been affected by supply chain issues, road closures, devastation to the local agriculture, and panic buying.
When we see empty shelves and such widespread disruption to supply chains and obviously the devastating impact of the floods.
The floods are also making it difficult for people to get to the food banks to stock up.
We are seeing communities that are completely cut off. So we think about folks in Hope and Agassiz, in the Lytton area as well, and in Princeton. And we've been having to fly food into those communities in order to make sure that people are being fed.
On Thursday, the Greater Vancouver Food Bank helped fill helicopters with 5,000 pounds of food and supplies. Much of that food will be distributed through food banks in the impacted communities.
With the flood that we're having, we are seeing a lot of new families that are coming to the food bank that have never been here before.
Taylor Keeley is with Archway Community Services, an organization that operates the food bank in Abbotsford. He says as the need grows, food banks are facing their own challenges.
We were running out of food around, in the afternoon around 1:30, and we weren't able to serve our normal clientele, let alone the new people that are coming to the food bank.
Empty shelves are becoming a more common sight here at Archway Community Services as a large portion of their fresh produce is often supplied by Fraser Valley farmers, many of whom will no longer be able to donate those essential foods because of the floods.
We're not seeing the fresh eggs and the milk that we would normally have from the dairy farms. We're not getting those as well, so it is a bit alarming.
Keeley says they have received an outpour of community support and donations, but it's still not enough.
It's been really great to see all the community members rally together to support the good work that we're doing here at the food bank.
He encourages anyone who is able to donate to go online to find out each individual food bank's needs. Janella Hamilton, CBC News, Abbotsford.
In Merritt, the Coldwater River has not only overspilled its banks, but has also set a new course and now takes a different route through the city. In an effort to protect vital infrastructure, including the water treatment plant, the province is trying to determine if the river can be forced back to its former route. Experts say water levels are slowly receding and a plan to tackle the river's course are just now taking shape. All 7,000 residents were ordered out of Merritt on Monday. Meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe joins us now with the forecast. And Joe, you've been looking at the rivers. What are you seeing? What's happening there?
Yeah, Anita, I think as water levels continue to drop, we will see more impact and trickle-down effects of rivers essentially rerouting themselves because of the force of the rain. I spoke to a group of scientists who were actually supposed to go up in a helicopter on Monday, part of a project to assess the frequency of landslides and their impact on salmon. That was, of course, delayed, and they went up today and noticed how many more slides than they expected between Hope and Lillooet. They counted 10 to 12 smaller slides, but basically the river rerouting itself, washing out the culverts and the road as the river overpoured its banks. Take a listen to one of the geomorphologists I spoke to from SFU about some of those impacts.
Well, that was another thing that we found is, we had assumed that these landslides, that they would have made it down to the river. And because most of them were washing out the road and not really very big, they put a lot of sediment into the river, which means that there's no chance of any of the landslides that happened this past week blocking the river. But of course, when you put all that sediment into the river, you put a lot of fine sediment into the river that winds up in the gravels. And right now, the salmon eggs are in the gravels. So
the salmon eggs are in the riverbanks right now. So another trickle-down effect we'll be watching in the days to come. But he also said, rivers need space to move, and we've pinned them in, and they'll need even more room to move with climate change. This is the next system I'm watching. That is an atmospheric river hitting the central and northern coastal sections tonight. Snowfall warnings in place for the north. We will see part of that system Monday into Tuesday. It is dry for the next couple of days, but this is the start of a wet week. So Monday to Tuesday, that's the next rain event. We've heard officials talk about it all day. You can see for Chilliwack down towards Abbotsford, possibly a 20 to 40 millimeter rain event. But Anita, I want to take you through to the end of the week because we do have a series of systems coming, and I will lay out what the potential impact could be next week.
Okay, thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
61 poultry farms are affected by this disastrous flooding. Many of the farmers are struggling to cope. They've been forced from their homes, and there are significant disruptions to supply chains. So let's bring in broiler farmer Dave Martins. Dave, right now your farm is sitting 6 feet underwater. You've lost 40,000 chickens. Horrible for you. I know your farm is evacuated, but tell me what you do know about the situation.
Well, the situation is rather fluid at this point in time. And I can't get to my farm right now because there's just no road accessible, and we're actually asked to stay off the roads. So there are some farmers that are able to get to their place via boats and things like that. I've had some people go by my farm on their boats and take pictures and send them to me. And it's horrific what we see out there. So it's preparing me for what I'm going to see when we can eventually get back there. And yeah, we'll see where that winds up.
You and your wife built this farm from scratch back in 1990. Tell me the feeling you get knowing that all of that hard work is gone.
Oh, you're really going to make me cry here now or something, Anita. But anyhow, it's a lot of the memories and things like that. That's the hard thing. The other stuff is just stuff. We will rebuild. It's sad, the loss of the animals. It's going to be a big financial hit to us, but we do have insurance for the birds. It's going to be the repairs, the maintenance, the devastation to the homes. Like I said, it's hard on me. It's hard on my children. Many of them, well, they all were born in that farm home, so that's been their farm home their whole lives. So to see this happen is extremely difficult. So that aspect of it's a little bit hard. So we'll get down there eventually. Having been able to see pictures and know that it's just not a dream, that it's really actually happened, is helping us to prepare. We're people of faith, and we have a big network of people that are behind us and supporting us, and we know that we'll get through this. We're farmers, we're resilient. We deal with weather, we deal with shortages of supply, not right now, but we deal with grains and things like that, and sawdust, and all of different weather conditions. But we're resourceful, and we will rebuild, and we'll come back.
I admire your strength, Dave. I can't imagine what you're going through. How long do you think it's going to take to rebuild?
Well, we're not talking days, weeks. It's likely going to be months. It's going to be quite a great deal of time, I think. But I want to assure the public that there is product in the pipeline. There's other farmers out there that are growing chicken and eggs and milk, and to don't go out and panic buy. And I know that seems like a pat answer, but you don't need to do that. We're managed by supply management, so we have product in the pipeline, and chicken is coming to the stores. For us, there's an emotional hit. There's memories and losses like that. It's going to take time, but I have to keep reminding myself it's all just stuff. And, I'm thankful that I have a good, strong agricultural community, and farming and chicken farming, and even the grain farmers and berry farmers have offered help to come and clean. So we will rebuild. We will get going. I expect we'll miss a couple cycles of production, but don't worry, there's product in the pipeline. It's coming.
Dave Martins is a poultry farmer on the Sumas Prairie. Thank you for your time, Dave.
Thanks, Anita. Take care. Have a good evening.
And we will have much more on the flood situation later in the show, including efforts to shore up the dikes in Abbotsford and the individual efforts to help those caught in the crisis. That's coming. An unexpected announcement last night from India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi reversing the controversial farm laws at the center of global protests. That opposition felt here at home in BC, especially with the Punjabi community. As Beneat Brach reports, farmers are rejoicing but tempering their celebrations with cautious optimism.
Celebrations taking place in this province and around the world. In BC, this blueberry farmer is one of many supporting those in India and now feeling the relief.
We feel very good. We are going so many rallies and everybody's happy, you know.
Kuner has farmed in Abbotsford for 35 years, with personal connections and property back home in India. My friends and relatives called congratulating. From here, from India, everybody's happy. All these farmers sacrificed their lives, protesting in sun, rain, finding shade. The efforts of farmers cultivating a victory, he says. Celebrating along with the farmers is this American cardiologist who has been just outside Delhi for a year, helping treat more than 100,000 protesters.
When I heard the news about this, I literally couldn't stop crying. It literally feels like there was a noose around the necks of the farmers, and we were able to remove that noose.
Something that took too long to happen, with more than 700 farmers dying during the protests in India, he says.
And all the human rights violations that we suffered through, and I think it ended.
For a year, the Indian government has defended its laws, saying that they were necessary to modernize the country's agriculture sector and boost private investment. But farmers protested, saying that they were a threat to their livelihood, forcing them to sell their crops at a price too low. But with all the joy, some warn it's still important to be critical, as the announcement comes before key elections next year. And the government must still repeal the laws, a process not expected to start until December.
There are still other outstanding issues that the farmers want discussed.
He says volunteers from Khalsa Aid will continue to stand with the farmers until they return to their land.
Many of these farmers who've been out protesting can see, light at the end of this tunnel, that they will be able to have dignity in their farming.
Others here in BC remain optimistic, sharing the news and reveling in the celebration. Benit Brach, CBC News, Abbotsford.
Police believe a man killed this morning in New Westminster was targeted, but say the city's 5th homicide of the year is not linked to gang activity. Police say the man walked into Waves coffee shop on Columbia Street asking for help. Staff called 911 when they saw he was bleeding heavily. The man was taken to hospital but did not survive. Police aren't saying how the man was injured, but they believe there are people who witnessed the incident and are asking them to reach out. The number of people injured in that gas line explosion yesterday at a Canadian Forces base in Comox has more than doubled. 22 people are now said to be hurt. The Department of National Defense says 16 military personnel were injured, along with 6 civilians. 1 person is still in hospital, and the site remains an active emergency scene. The blast happened around 9 a.m. in a barrack that was under renovation. Early reports suggest a worker operating an excavator hit a gas line. WorkSafe BC is investigating it, as is the military. Okay, coming up after the break, the Pfizer vaccine for kids aged 5 to 11 approved by Health Canada this morning. So how soon might those shots be ready to go? We've got the details. Thanks for staying with us during our commercial-free live stream. It's been an unforgettable week in BC, with historic rainfall causing floods, landslides, and widespread property damage. We're going to keep showing you some of the harrowing video. Have a look. Health Canada has approved its first COVID vaccine for kids 5 to 11. And now BC parents can start counting the days until their child's first dose.
It will be arriving the middle of next week. I would expect you'll start to see doses go out the beginning around the week of November the 29th as it's distributed around the province. I think it's very exciting news.
Until then, parents can register their children online for the shot. Our health reporter Vicadopia has more on Health Canada's details about the pediatric version of the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine.
They're among the millions of young Canadians who, as of today, are eligible to get vaccinated against the coronavirus.
Thank goodness. They have taken long enough to approve it. I can't wait.
The timing of the approval is critical. Kids under 12 are testing positive more than any other age group. Vaccination reduces their chances of getting sick and infecting others more susceptible to severe illness, a risk that's kept families apart.
I don't have any family in Canada, and my children haven't seen any of their cousins. They haven't seen my grandmother.
Health Canada confirms in a clinical trial the Pfizer vaccine was over 90% effective at preventing COVID-19 in children between 5 and 11. The U.S. has already given more than 2 million kids that age their first shot, with no major safety concerns.
The department has determined that the benefits of the vaccine outweigh the potential risks.
Kids could begin getting their shots in just a few days.
I can now confirm that Canada will begin receiving doses Sunday, with all the 2.9 million doses received by the end of next week. That's enough doses to offer a first shot to all eligible children in this country.
Now comes the delicate job of persuading parents who are still unsure. In one of Toronto's least vaccinated neighborhoods, public health volunteers encounter questions and hesitation.
So they're concerned about if it's kind of painful, or if they get fever or something, or how safe it is.
They're also reminding parents this could help children return to normal.
Then they can go to school and have less disruption in their lives. The last 2 years have been really difficult for the majority of kids.
The National Advisory Committee on Immunization recommends extending the interval between the 2 pediatric doses to 8 weeks from Pfizer's recommended 3 weeks, which means children wouldn't be fully vaccinated until the new year. Vicadopia, CBC News, Toronto.
While we wait to get children vaccinated against COVID-19, 87% of those 12 and older are now fully immunized against the virus in BC. The province is reporting 497 new cases and 3 additional deaths today. Of the active cases, 358 individuals are in hospital and 109 are in intensive care. And since the start of the pandemic, tens of thousands of women have left the Canadian workforce, in some cases burnt out from overwork and feeling squeezed by a lack of support. As Michelle Gussoub reports, experts say it's key to understand why women are leaving and whether they'll come back to work.
By now, you've probably heard of the Great Resignation. Thousands of workers are leaving their jobs as the pandemic stretches into a second year. But here in Canada, far more women are leaving the labor market than men.
Do I want to give all my time and energy to a company who don't care for me? Because at any day, I could have been one of those people they cut off. Do I want to dedicate all my time and mental health to this job?
Sarah Shahid not alone in saying the pandemic left her burnt out. Women across Canada say working from home and parenting is simply exhausting.
They condition a lot of women to feel like we need to perform and give everything at the expense of ourselves. And I think, there's a price to be paid for that. And there comes a certain point in life where you just can't do it anymore. It's not sustainable.
A study by RBC found that 100,000 working-age Canadian women have left the labor market entirely, meaning they're not looking for a new job. That's 10 times the number of Canadian men who have left.
Women have disappeared from the labor market in the pandemic. This should, we should be learning from it. It should cause alarm, and we should better understand who they are, what sectors, do they plan on coming back, or what would have to be true for them to come back.
Bednar says women-dominated fields like nursing and teaching are already feeling the strain, and there's a stark difference between the women leaving for more fulfilling jobs and those pushed out because of a lack of childcare.
Exits that are kind of forced exits, right? People feeling that they can't either, that they, maybe don't want to or cannot keep up their professional obligations given their obligations in the home.
More research needed, Bednar says, to find out when and how so many Canadian women might come back to work. Michelle Gassoub, CBC News, Vancouver.
A U.S. jury has acquitted Kyle Rittenhouse of all charges in connection with deadly shootings during last year's protests in Wisconsin.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Kyle H. Rittenhouse, not guilty.
The 18-year-old was facing homicide and attempted homicide charges and possible life in prison in the shooting deaths of 2 men and the wounding of a third. It happened in Kenosha in August of 2020 during a night of racial justice protests. Rittenhouse was carrying a semi-automatic rifle when he said he came into contact with some angry protesters. He claimed he acted in self-defense during his trial. The shootings have become a flashpoint in the U.S. debate over gun control, vigilantism, and racial injustice. A plan to build a levee canceled, but the situation in the Sumas Prairie in Abbotsford touch and go. Efforts to shore up destroyed dikes going day and night. We take you there again next.
In British Columbia, it's not the tap water causing concern, it's the rising rivers. Flooding has forced hundreds from their homes, stranded thousands of others. Tonight, the upper Fraser River is peaking around Prince George. High water should reach the lower mainland over the weekend. The worst flooding around Terrace, where the Skeena River is spilling its banks. And that's where the CBC's Bonnie Allen begins our story.
In northwest BC, the rivers are still rising. And so are stress levels. This morning, high waters hit Todd Ritter's doorstep. He and his wife saved for 11 years to buy this house. Now forestry crews are trying to save it.
I'm sick. We've been here for 2 years. I mean, if it comes in through the door or through the windows, there's no coverage, no insurance.
Doug Ames and his family are exhausted. Ames's father is sick in hospital. They tried to save his house, but failed. Now they're working on their own.
We're not alone. There's a whole lot of people worse off than we are, so I guess we move on and help somebody else if we lose our battle.
Hundreds of people have vacated their homes. The main highway east and west of Terrace is still cut off by a mudslide and flooding. The situation looked desperate, but today much-needed supplies were trucked in using a back road. Most disturbing for residents is this. 70% of the snowpack is left in the mountains. To the south in the Fraser Valley, more than 1,000 residents are on evacuation alert. They're waiting for the river to peak, likely this weekend.
I think it's getting a little nervous now, a little scary.
Oh yeah, it's coming.
The Fraser River was expected to rise another meter or so, but now officials say the cooler temperatures and a break in the rain have made severe flooding less likely. A relief to most, but some areas are not protected by dikes, so dozens of homes are still vulnerable. In Fort Langley, a park was closed this morning.
Come on.
Farmers are moving their dairy cows to higher ground.
I'm very fortunate that this guy's willing to feed them, he's willing to milk them, take care of them.
Back in Terrace, those helping hands are forcing flood victims to soldier on.
Only possessions, I mean, you can replace them all, but I just appreciate the help that we're getting here.
The rivers are beginning to level off. Heavy rain or rapid snowmelt could change that, so the danger is not over. Bonnie Allen, CBC News, Vancouver.
Days after floods forced thousands from their homes and shattered road links, the province has turned to extraordinary measures. Millions in BC have now been told to ration gasoline. And as Katie Nicholson tells us, gas stations in several regions will need to make supplies last until December 1st.
Freddie Roush's Jeep was on empty when she heard the news.
And I'm usually sloppy with gas and I'll kind of push it. I thought that's not a good idea today.
One of the millions of British Columbians now subject to this flood-related fuel ration.
People in southwestern British Columbia, Vancouver Island, and the Sunshine Coast will be limited to 30 liters per visit to the gas station.
If I do it and 90% of the other people do it, we're not going to run out, are we?
Emergency and essential vehicles will have access to fuel, and they'll need it in the frantic effort to shore up the Sumas Dike. As this steady stream of trucks cart rocks and soil to patch a 100-meter breach in the dike, overhead the steady beat of choppers. As soldiers survey the work ahead before the next deluge.
Our system will take that. What I don't know is the integrity of the existing Sumas Dike. We've already found some weaknesses. It hasn't let go, but it could let go 10 minutes from, or maybe even as I'm here.
The mayor is confident that the breach will be filled by Tuesday morning when more rain is expected. Farmers in this region have learned firsthand how fast and unforgiving these surges are. Beneath the brown water, the 40,000 chickens one farmer had to leave behind.
I left the lights on and the power going. I didn't want to turn the power off because they would suffocate. So nobody wants to see these birds die.
There are nearly 700 evacuees in this area, including Amber Ziganash, waiting for days now for the roads to open so she can go home to Calgary or take a much longer route through the north.
I'm terrified because I keep hearing it's snowing, all the routes that I could possibly take. I'm just terrified. I don't know what I'm going to do. Like, I hunker down for the winter, get a job, I don't know.
Now, add to the uncertainty whether she'd even be able to get enough fuel for the drive home.
That's Katie Nicholson reporting tonight. Let's go to the community of Yarrow in Chilliwack now, where the situation remains unchanged. Many residents in the Chilliwack community have been anxiously awaiting updates all day. As the CBC's Susanna De Silva reports, what happens next door in Abbotsford has an impact on them, too.
There is urgency behind their efficiency. A dozen dump trucks of sand have been bagged already.
Yeah, I just wanted to help out my community.
The community is rallying together so incredibly. So there isn't something that isn't getting done. If someone's hungry, there's food. There's bakeries on the front line. There's sandbagging. It's just continuous.
Right now, we're kind of overwhelmed by a lot of help.
This local pastor has been helping organize, giving an outlet to those worried as water here continues to rise. Water is flowing from the western part of Abbotsford east to here. This whole area is part of a massive lake drained to create fertile farmland. Now the water is returning.
I think a lot of people do really feel overwhelmed, but I think we're just trying to focus on what we can do instead of what if questions.
And trying to help is all many can do. Guides have been rescuing people and ferrying others up and down the Fraser River.
We're out here every day, and all we want to do is help. Nobody's asking for anything. Nobody's asking for money. Everyone's just basically donating their time and money, fuel, just to get people home safely.
Today, Transport Canada issued an interim order limiting boat traffic to essential activity, but that worries people like Wendy Morrison, who hitched a ride to go for her cancer treatment.
I would miss my appointments, and it's vital that I get there. So I appreciate their help. Without them, I wouldn't be there. So.
Evacuees are also frustrated by the restrictions on access.
Just getting medication for the cattle, because it's hard to get. Chilliwack vets don't have enough to sell.
But the worry over what's been left behind hits hard.
Well, I almost threw up, I guess, so yeah, kind of gut churning, I guess, right? They're talking weeks, right? So we're planning to put our kids in different school because we won't be moving back here for a long time.
That's Susanna De Silva reporting tonight in Chilliwack. Now, in some parts of the province, the focus has turned to recovery and the price tag associated with the damage left behind. Who will pay for it all is still a major question. Thomas Dagla shows us how extreme weather events like this are unearthing new challenges for property owners, governments, and the insurance industry.
Marcus Harvey's basement is filled with reminders of the flooding that's become a recurring ordeal.
2018, this is how high it was. So we had to replace all this wood.
When New Brunswick's St. John River bursts its banks, Majorville is all too frequently inundated. So a decade ago, when Harvey was planning to build a new house on his property, he got bad news from his existing insurer.
Head office has essentially drawn a big red circle around the floodplain where you are, and you were going to get dropped anyway. So essentially, pound sand, no insurance for you.
His family eventually found another broker, but his case highlights a growing fear among Canadian homeowners as climate change-fueled extreme weather takes an increasing toll.
Insurance is meant to protect against an if, not a when. And once a loss becomes, this is going to happen with a certain degree of certainty, insurance doesn't work anymore.
What's known as overland flood insurance has only been around for a few years in Canada, but millions live in areas that make them ineligible for coverage, including most of those affected by recent storms in BC. The flooding crisis prompting the province to offer disaster relief to those who couldn't get coverage, as the industry calls for public money to help fund private insurance too.
If we want to open flood insurance up to those individuals, we will need a partnership with government, and that's going to require us to rethink how we pay for this.
As for Harvey, he got government help, but doesn't want his tax dollars subsidizing private insurance.
It's a money grab, and it's unfortunate that that's what they're doing. It's passing the baton off to the taxpayer.
As climate change strikes, insurers warn claims are growing, and now rates could climb too. Thomas Dagla, CBC News, Toronto.
What was once a lake turned farmland has become a lake yet again. We take a look at historic Sumas Lake and ask why it was emptied. At 6:43, a live look at Victoria tonight. I think everyone is hoping for dry weather. Johanna has your weekend forecast coming up.
Kath was Canada's first ever professional female surfer. She was shaped by the wind and the surf as much as this wild coastline.
I feel so comfortable in the ocean. I feel like it's my home. It feels amazing to be sitting in the ocean and just having that energy of the swell just moving you up and down, and you really learn to just kind of relax and go with the flow and not fight it. The shape of the waves are going to depend on how big the swell is and what kind of swell is coming. Wind swells make powerful waves to surf. I like being part of nature and part of the wind and part of the ocean. Without the wind, we wouldn't have waves. So I love the wind. It does make you feel alive.
And it's not just humans who love the wind and big waves. Stellar sea lions like to play in them as well. times, Kath has even surfed with sea lions.
They will just pop out of the water and they'll bark at you, and then all of a sudden you'll stand up and you'll just be surfing on the wave, and you look around and they're just surfing the wave with you. If only I had a built-in wetsuit like a sea lion, that would be really great.
In the year 2050, how will BC look? From agriculture to cities, how will climate change life? Don't miss 2050 Degrees of Change, a CBC Vancouver original podcast, now available.
Abbotsford is still trying to prevent any more catastrophic flooding, much of that happening on the Sumas Prairie, where there was once Sumas Lake. The lake was the center of life for the people of the Sumas First Nation, but in the early 1920s, it was drained to make more land for the farming in the region. Now that land sits below sea level and without constant work, the waters are prone to return. The Barrowtown pump station has to move 2.3 million litres of water per minute from the low-lying region to keep Sumas Prairie dry. Let's bring in Johanna Wagstaffe now, who's been following the shifting waters in the Sumas area all week. Jo, are levels likely to continue to drop?
Well, luckily, Anita, over the next couple of days, dry conditions will mean the slow drainage of the water right across the region, but particularly for the Sumas Prairie. This is a topic that I think, myself included, many of us are really just diving into. But we spoke to a filmmaker earlier today who became interested in the history of Sumas Lake after learning that settlers had drained it and displaced Indigenous communities. And I think she really just put the point together about what many of us have learned in the past few days. Take a listen.
There's been 3 floods in 100 years. So we are going to continue to have floods. It's inevitable, the timeline we don't know, but we are fighting a very strong will to be a lake. That area wants to, it floods mildly every year. It wants to be its original state, and we're doing everything we can to artificially keep it as dry as possible.
So many of the impacts we've been seeing a result of nature trying to shift, whether it's rivers or return to natural lakes. You're looking at sort of a general outline of the old watershed, the former Sumas Lake, and that has led to the drainage problems we've been seeing, both from the Nooksack River south of the border, the Fraser and the Chilliwack to the north, and the drainage that we were seeing west to east on top of the dike breaches. So she will actually be working on a full length documentary in the months to come. We are watching that rain very closely for early next week. Stopping you Monday evening, that's when the atmospheric river that is bringing heavy snow, I should mention, to central and northern BC over the weekend. We're talking 10 to 30 centimeters through the Peace, all the way in through Stewart. This is going to be a high impact snow event for the north. It slides down to the south from Monday afternoon into Tuesday. That's the 20 to 40 millimeter story. Then the door is open to Pacific System. So we see another big weather maker for Wednesday through Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, a few more by the end of the week. This is why there is concern for not the same kind of storm we saw on Monday, but a longer duration event that could bring another 100 plus millimeters to impacted areas. Tomorrow, it's cold temperatures, really the story for the interior, waking up to wind chills around minus 25 for Fort St. John, minus 13 for Prince George, still a minus 8 wind chill for Kelowna. all these temperatures you see below seasonal by a couple of degrees. Same story on the island, 9 for Victoria. Seen some clearing skies, but Port Hardy, you'll get that rain in tomorrow afternoon in advance of that system that'll slide down for Monday. I've got a few showers in there for Vancouver's forecast tomorrow morning. We should see some sunshine. This is the dry before the active storm period next week. Looks like Sunday will remain dry as well. Things ramp up for early next week. So right now I'm sort of tracking at least 3 to 4 different systems. It's hard to nail the exact rainfall totals this far out, so we'll take them one at a time. Monday into Tuesday, again, a 20 to 40 millimeter event for southwestern BC, and then things may ramp up as we head into the second half of the week. On top of that, strong winds, shifting snow levels. This will be another dynamic week of weather forecasting, but at least, Anita, not seeing anything close to the storm that we had on Monday.
That is good news. Thanks, Johanna.
You're welcome.
All week, stories have emerged of selfless effort to help the stranded, to rescue those caught, to aid farmers in the flood zone. We hear from a boater offering trips to those caught in crisis.
When Pierce Gray, partner Chris, and the rest of the family moved from the big city of Toronto to the tiny community of Clementsport, they packed their giant bunnies. These are continental giant rabbits, and now they live in this beautiful barn.
Toronto living. This is very different than Toronto living. We have multiple buildings and lots of space, fresh air.
There's Bjorn the Gray, Miss Paisley, the mama of these 10-week-old cuties, and Ragnar the Red-Eye.
His head looks as big as yours. His little paws are sticking out. He looks like he's falling asleep on you.
They are known as the largest rabbit in the world. How big do they get? Well, a lot bigger than the average dwarf bunny. The Guinness World Record is a 54-pounder. Pierce's love of continentals began about 5 years ago, impressed by their beauty and size.
Squishy, winter teddy bear, Sasquatch, cute thing.
But he also loved how easy they are to litter train and that they're oh so gentle.
It's one of the reasons they make a great support pet for people with autism or children with behavior issues, because a dog will get on you, a cat will get on you. An adult rabbit will do this, and they're very intuitive to behavior and stuff. And a rabbit will tend to give you a nudge, a very gentle nudge with their head to say, I'm here, pay attention to me.
These cuties even have their own Instagram page, Giant Canadian Bunnies. It's believed that they're the first continental bunnies in the province. The rabbits aren't the only unusual pets that live here.
Black rooster right here on the ground. That is an Iamsamani. It's called a melanistic chicken. And then those 3 weird boys, they're the only of their kind in Nova Scotia. Those are called death layers. Hi, babies. Goose, goose. These are our Toulouse geese. Maud, Kathleen, and Lewis. Maud is the tiniest. Kathleen is the middle size, and Lewis is the biggest.
But none of these guys are rocking an Instagram account, at least yet. While he does breed the rabbits, he's in no rush to sell his babies. When he's ready, it will only be to the right owner. He never wants to see these guys winding up in a rabbit rescue. Colleen Jones, CBC News, Clementsport.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell. Here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
Stream your favorite CBC dramas or comedies 24/7 on demand on the CBC Gem app. Plus, you can live stream CBC Vancouver News. Check it out at gem.cbc.ca. And never miss a special programming series or contest. Subscribe to CBC Vancouver's e-newsletter at cbc.ca/Vancouver inbox and keep connected with us.
Transport Canada confirmed as of this afternoon, non-essential marine vessel traffic is prohibited in certain flooded areas of BC. But all this week, citizens with access to boats have been stepping up to help stranded people and those in need of supplies. Videographer Gianpaolo Mendoza caught up with a river guide about what it's been like on the water.
Hi there, I'm Landon Gill. I'm part of the Fraser Valley Angling Guides Association. And we are out here just trying to volunteer our time, trying to get people to and from where they need to be, essential cancer treatment patients, and anyone that is stuck and stranded and needs to get home for their safety. I've given probably about 15 to 20 people rides, and then there's been so many boats doing it, like we've probably given at least 200 plus people rides and rescue missions for sure. We picked up a lot of people from Hope there, and they were so happy and relieved. A lot of people were in tears just to get home, you know, little kids. There was a couple 10 and 12-year-old that their parents were in Chilliwack and they were stuck in Hope without their parents. You know, people are just relieved and happy to see their family again and in a time of uncertainty, and it's just really good to be able to help out.
Thanks so much, Wendy. Oh, thank you, Landon.
No problem.
How would I get there if it wasn't for people like Landon and his guiding company getting me there? I would miss my appointments, and it's vital that I get there.
Okay. See you, Wendy.
See ya.
We're just out here trying to help people. We're just trying to get people home and get people safe.
Really incredible work done by so many this week. You've been watching our special BC flood coverage. We've been bringing you those stories of resilience and support. And tonight, we're going to leave you with some of the incredible images captured over this past week by our photojournalists. Good night and have a safe weekend.